All right, you ready?
Okay.
Okay, you're on. Let me make sure this mic is on. She's double mic'd here. All right, you're good to go.
Okay, can you all hear me now? Okay, perfect. So my name is Stephanie Boyance. I'm the program director here for Broad Creek Care Center. And so some of you guys might have seen my face around in some form or fashion if I've been walking around over here at Tide Point, if not over at Broad Creek Care Center. So first, I just want to welcome you all. Thank you for coming to our little presentation today. I'm going to be talking about a couple of different things. First, I'm going to be talking about fall prevention and home evaluations, because I know that's what you all came to hear about today. But the other thing I also wanted to start off talking about is our rehab team. So we have had some changes in our rehab team. I'm one of those changes. So I felt like it was important for you guys to be able to see the new staff members and also some of the old staff members, and then get to learn a little bit about us. So at the end, you're more than welcome to come up and read some information about us. A couple of weeks ago, it was actually National Rehab Week, and so we did a nice little thing over at the Care Center where we celebrated Rehab Week all week long. We had some fun little activities, and one of those things was actually putting together bios on each of the therapists and putting together pictures. And so some of them, obviously, you'll see family pictures, pictures with our fur babies as well on there. But it talks about where we, a little bit about our families, where we might have come from, how long we've been practicing, things like that, some of our specialties and our backgrounds. And so that way you get a little bit of information about where we've come from, what we're doing, and how long we've been here at the Care Center and or at Tide Point. So I encourage you guys, if you have a few minutes after the presentation, just to come up and take a look at that. We do right now have 3 physical therapy team members, 2 occupational therapy team members, and then I'm also an occupational therapist by background, so I'm like the third one. I'm like the bonus, and then 1 speech therapist. Okay? So kind of going now over to the fall prevention and home evaluation information. Again, this is not a reading test, I promise. So I'm going to go through some of that information. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you guys have had a fall or a loss of balance within the last month? One within the last month? How about within the last 6 months? Okay. How about within the last year? Okay, so a good amount of you guys. Okay. Now, how many of you guys, as I can kind of see around the room, how many of you guys are using different pieces of equipment to get around safely? Do you feel pretty comfortable using those pieces of equipment to get around safely? Okay, good. So some of the information that we've gathered through all of our research is 1 in 3 individuals over the age of 65 will have a fall within the next year. As you all know, some falls can be pretty serious. Some can be pretty, I just slipped and kind of, stubbed my toe. Might not have lost my balance too much. I caught myself on the chair because I was caught myself on the rug. But other things, like you said, can be pretty serious. You could hit your head, end up with a brain injury. You could break a hip. Have any of you had a serious fall where you've fallen and maybe fractured your hip? No? Your shoulder, okay. And did you end up having to have therapy after that?
Yes.
Okay. And then I saw you raise your hand. So same thing, was it your shoulder or your hip? Hip. Okay, you had therapy after that as well?
Yeah, a lot of it,
Okay.
At the Care Center.
At the Care Center, okay. Anybody else had a fall where your kneecap, okay. Needed therapy after that as well? Okay. So we want to try to prevent falls in any way that we can, and a lot of that is through prevention. So therapy plays a big role in that, and some of the ways that we do that is by seeing the therapist before a fall happens. And that can be through physical therapy, occupational therapy, and or speech therapy, because speech therapy, I know you kind of think to yourself, well, why would I see a speech therapist for this? But speech therapy can play a role in some of your cognitive abilities and also your hearing, because hearing can play a role in your ability to maintain your equilibrium and your balance. But then also occupational therapy, if you're getting up, dressed, and you're not able to maintain your balance during your regular activities of daily living, that can impact your balance. And then the other thing that occupational therapists can do is home evaluations. And so that's why we're also talking about that today. Have any of you guys had a home evaluation before here at Tide Point? No? Okay. So some of the things that our occupational therapy team members can do is actually come to your apartment and go through your house and see where there's some opportunities to make your home a little bit safer. And so I have actually some little tip sheets, and I have copies for everybody here. And so these are some of the things that we actually, again, not an eye thing, I promise, where we look. So we look at everything. We look in your bathroom. Would it be appropriate to have a grab bar in your shower? What angle would it be appropriate to have a grab bar in your shower? What about in your bathroom? What about getting up the steps in your house? Are there steps? Are there little thresholds? Could those thresholds be removed? Things like that. What about the lighting? Are you someone that might have some difficulty with your vision because you're wearing glasses? Are there appropriate sections where your lighting is, that if you're getting up in the middle of the night, is that lighting bright enough for you? So all of those things are the things that an occupational therapist would look at when they would come to your house and they would assess your home and they would make those recommendations. They also look at how high your toilet seats are, making sure that you're safe getting up and down off the toilet. If not, there's lots of different options out there. So this whole checklist is a front and a back page that the occupational therapist would look. And again, this is just one example. I try to make it short and sweet for you guys so that you guys could take a peek at this. We also look at the front and the back. If you also have an outside exterior porch or anything like that, we also look at that if you're going to be going outside, to make sure that we're able to make it as safe as possible for you in your home, because we, again, want you being as independent and safe as possible at home. And then the other thing that we can also look at is, from a physical therapy perspective, is how well you're actually up and moving. So like we talked about earlier, I see a couple of different options in the room here. So I see a rollator, I see a cane, lots of different walker options available as well. So a physical therapist would actually have you in our clinic, and we would look at how are you walking, how are you balancing. So we would take you outside on our little walking path. We would have you in the clinic, sometimes within the parallel bars, standing up on 1 foot, 2 feet, seeing how well we're able to kind of nudge you around, see how your balance is to make sure that you're as safe as possible, sometimes with your eyes open, sometimes with them closed. Because again, you're going to be in a situation at home sometimes where you're doing those things, where you're reaching into your cabinet to maybe get a box of cereal out, and you might be leaning on 1 foot more than the other and you're reaching off. So that's going to be more of your dynamic standing balance. So we want to make sure that you're safe in all those different areas. So have you guys, just thinking about some of those examples that I've talked about, have you noticed where maybe your balance isn't maybe 100% during those examples throughout the day? Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so now I'm just going to go through some of this other information that we've found just through research. So after someone has a fall, they're more likely to try to restrict themselves from doing their daily activities. So the more likely you have a fall, the more likely that you're going to try to limit your mobility. You're not going to want to get up and start doing things on your own. So you're going to have some other person, whether it's another caregiver or another loved one, come in and do things for you. So we definitely don't want that. We want you to try to remain as independent as possible, and that's where, again, we come into play. We also find that because of your fall risk then increasing after the first fall, that means that your safety around the home will tend to decrease, because then you're being more concerned and worried about falls, because what's the first thing that's going to pop up into your head as soon as you go to stand? I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. I'm going to fall. So you get into that mindset of falling all the time versus I can do this. I can do this. So a lot of times we look at making sure that your confidence starts to increase when you're in therapy versus getting into that mindset of being concerned about falls all the time. So that's something that therapy also focuses on. So here are some factors right in the middle that we really focus on when we're in therapy, okay? And the reason why we do this is because there are multiple things that we look at. So we look at the environmental factors. Are you wearing proper footwear? I see everybody here is wearing good footwear, back of your foot's covered, socks, shoes, good sandals, walking around. We want to make sure you're doing that. We don't want somebody wearing just slip-on shoes that's not supportive of your ankle. Any obstacles on the floor, and again, this is something that a home assessment is going to be looking at. So does anybody here have any throw rugs around their house? Okay. I knew there might be a few, so that's why I throw that out there. So sometimes throw rugs can be a trip hazard in the house. And so especially if you're walking around with a piece of equipment or a walker, that can get caught really easily. Or if your toe drags, that can happen, and that can cause you to trip and fall. Sometimes you're able to catch yourself, depending on how your balance is, but sometimes you're not, and that can lead you to go forward and fall. So picking up those throw rugs and or getting the tape to be able to tape those down is really important. Poor lighting, we already talked about, so making sure that that lighting is appropriate and in the right spacing. Not having the appropriate device. So again, we talked about having the right device. So that's where, again, a therapist would come in, make sure you're using the right device. If you're not utilizing the right device, we would make sure you have the right device in your home. Making sure that if anything in your home is on wheels. So sometimes when we buy certain objects, I know I have something in my house right now where it's like something for shoes, just so I can easily move, put my shoes on it, and my kids have, when they first walk in the house, put their shoes on it and it has wheels on it. They can easily move it around, but sometimes that can get into the way and it can be a trip hazard. So anything that might have wheels on it can be considered a trip hazard. So sometimes taking those wheels off of that device and then putting it down low to the ground is going to take that trip hazard out of the way, because now you're not having to worry about that moving around on you. Same thing goes with any small pets. Does anybody have any small pets? No? Okay. So any small cats, dogs get in between your legs, and that can happen. They don't mean to, because we love them, obviously. But they can get in between your legs and they can trip you up. Again, not intentionally, but that does happen. Unfamiliar settings, and then again, we already talked about lack of railings or grab bars, and that would be something that a home assessment would be able to address. So in regards to unfamiliar settings, say that you've just moved into Tide Point and you are new to the area and you want to get an idea of how you can set up your home to make it as safe as possible. Again, that would be how a home assessment would be able to help you. Or if you're new to the area in general and you want to see how you might be able to move around outside on the walking path and things like that a little bit more safely, that would be something that the therapist would be able to help you with. From an individual factor perspective, I'm sure this is something that you might have heard about before. Medications, I'm sure that you probably have talked about with your doctor. How many of you guys are on medications? Okay, everybody's hand goes up in the room. Medications are going to affect your fall risk, some more than others. So knowing that information is important. So having that conversation with your doctor is very important. And that's why for us as therapists, we talk on a regular basis with your physician. And that's why that team approach is so important with us and the doctor as well as you, because if we're not communicating with you and the doctor to know what's going on and what's changing, then we might be missing a key part of that puzzle as to why you might have an increased risk of falls or balance issues. We talked about the lighting piece and poor vision. Again, that could be affecting balance. Any type of decreased strength, whether it's your arms or your legs, can be addressed by therapy, whether that's occupational therapy, where we tend to work on we split the body from here up, or physical therapy works from here down, because all of that can impact your strength and your mobility. Your ability to hold on to your different devices can impact your ability to push up and hold on to those devices, and then your legs being able to maintain your balance while you're up as well. And then pain. Anybody in here with pain, whether it's back, neck, legs, feet, ankle, any pain? Okay, so therapy is something that if you have pain, it could be something that's chronic, or which is long-standing, or something that's brand new. And that could be something that can trigger a fall to occur. So if that's happening, you definitely want to talk to your doctor, and we can see what's going on to try to affect that change so that you don't have a fall. We prevent it from happening before it happens. We talked about speech therapy earlier, and what does speech have to do with falls and fall prevention? Well, a big piece of this is cognitive and memory issues like we talked about. So if you're having trouble remembering certain things, they can play a role in helping you, whether it be with memory aids, memory books, hearing like we talked about earlier, because all of those things play a role in fall prevention. If you can't safely navigate around your home, they're going to be able to help with that in conjunction with physical therapy and occupational therapy. And then we've already talked about gait, so walking around and balance throughout this whole entire time. And then some other things I put on here were any other medical conditions. And that's going to be something, of course, that your doctor is going to be well aware of, and they're going to notify us of as referrals are put in. So if you have any type of heart, lung, circulation, any type of nervous system issues, if you're having any difficulty with incontinence, so if you're having to get up like we talked about throughout the night, and then it couples with having difficulty seeing with some poor vision, and then that difficulty with the lighting in your home, that can be a trifecta, which then leads to multiple falls. So all of those things are why therapy and home assessments can help you prevent falls at home. So on this side here, I just talked about some therapy interventions, and we've kind of talked about them throughout. So has anybody gone through therapy? I know we talked about a few folks have gone through therapy after a fall. Has anybody gone through therapy, aside from the few that we've talked about, outside of a fall situation? Okay. So some of the things that we do over here on our clinic over here, over at Broad Creek Care, we look at low vision, we look at pain, balance, we look at any type of activity of daily living. So that's grooming, bathing, dressing, toileting, any type of thing that's going to keep you as independent as possible in your home. Education, so that could be education in relation to anything. That could be transfers, it could be medication management, it can be exercise programs, anything, any of these items education-wise. Because again, a big piece of this is education to keep you safe and independent in your home. Flexibility, strength, we talked about environmental modifications. A big piece of that goes and ties hand in hand into the home assessment. Walking devices, and then we also look at incontinence and making sure that if you have any difficulty, and again that ties in with the ADLs or the self-care management piece, that you have all of those needs met. So if there's certain things that we can do from our end, whether that's strengthening exercises, that you are able to be on a toileting schedule or things like that, we are able to help you with that. Because again, that's going to help prevent falls. So there's a couple of things that we can do. We have certain screening tools. And for those of you that have been in therapy before, you've seen some of those screening tools. Some of them are very short. They're only 30 seconds. Some of them are much longer. Some of them are more like 2-3 minutes. And then we have our thorough evaluations that you would come over for, where we would actually do a full evaluation on you. And as a part of that evaluation, we do multiple screening tools. And then we have, during that evaluation, we set up functional goals. And then after that, we create a whole plan of care. And then from that plan of care, we set out everything that we're going to work on. And then you would continue to come over for therapy. And if we're doing a home assessment, then we would come to your home to do the home assessment. And then we plan out what we would do with you. And then we would work with maintenance to make those things and adjustments happen. Okay? So before I kind of give you free rein to come on up, and I'm going to talk about a couple of other little handouts I have here, does anybody have any questions about what we talked about in regards to fall prevention and the home assessments and what we do over in the therapy clinic and what options are also offered in your home? Yes?
Do you require a referral?
We do. So I actually have a sheet here. So if you're interested in either coming over to the clinic for therapy or having a home assessment done, I have a piece of paper where you can write down your name and your contact information, and then we can get with our wellness team and we can get a referral from your physician, and then we would get everything obtained from your doctor, and then we would be able to contact you for an evaluation to be set up. Say that one more time.
I don't understand.
So essentially, because we work hand in hand with the doctor just has to be the one to sign off and say that we're okay to come in and see you.
Oh, to come into your place?
Yes, or for you to come to us.
For assessment?
For assessment, yes ma'am. So what we do is we would just reach out to the doctor and say, this is what the concern is. Is it okay if we have a referral? And typically what happens is Carrie's actually in the back there. Carrie and and Carrie, myself, and Sherry work together, and we will reach out to the doctor and say, Mrs. So-and-so is looking for a therapy referral. Is that okay? And they will typically send over a prescription. And this is actually what the prescription looks like. I brought over one so you could take a peek at it. This is what our prescriptions look like, okay? And it has physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy, and it has all of your information at the top, and then they sign at the bottom, unless they have their own particular prescription that they want to use. But this is the typical one that gets sent over from our wellness center.
Did you ever get a no?
We have not gotten a no. Unless Carrie knows of any, we have not gotten a no. So, the doctors are very good. We have doctors all across the board that work with us over in our clinic. And then once we do our plan of care, we send our plan of care to them, and then they sign off on it. And then we just follow up with them. If any continued needs we address, and we need an updated plan of care, we send it over to them, and then they sign off on those until you no longer need therapy. Any other questions that you can think of? Yes?
Yeah, I thought you were going to show us if you're down on the floor, you've not broken and can't hurt yourself. How do you get up?
Okay, well, I can certainly show you that. So how many of you guys have been in that situation before where you're down on the floor? Okay, so a lot of folks. All right. So now typically, where have you guys, this might actually give me a better idea, where have you guys been in those situations? Have you been next to the bed? Have you been next to, like, in the dining room, or the front yard? Okay. The bed? Okay. I saw a couple other hands. The hall? Okay. Now, I know that you guys all have pendants, correct?
Right.
Okay. So my one question will be, are you wearing your pendants? Okay, I see a no. No. Okay, so the one thing I'm going to put a plug out for is please wear your pendant. And Carrie is shaking her head, so I did something good there. So what we would typically say, and there's going to be different ways to do this depending on how, depending on where you are, and who's around you, of course, and what's around you, because obviously if you're out in the front yard versus by the bed, it's going to be very different. You're going to have different pieces of equipment near you, or if you're in the hallway, it's going to be very different because depending on where you are in the hallway, you might not have anything. But typically, if you're down on the floor, I know you guys all didn't just gracefully get down there the way I did. But if you're down on the floor and you're on your side or anything like that, what you do want to try to do is you want to try to get to a point where you can be on your side in some form or fashion like this, okay? Where you can get up onto your, now, this is obviously with the caveat of if you have a, or are concerned about a broken hip, and this is why the pendants are so important, you want to be able to call for, get help with those pendants, because the more, if there is a risk of a fracture in your hip or somewhere on your body, the more you're moving around, the more at risk you are for making it worse. Okay, so that's why having those pendants on and calling for help is so important as quickly as possible. Because they want to stabilize where you are in place, EMS-wise. But again, if you're not wearing your pendant, this is what we're going to go with right now. You want to try to get onto your side as you can, and then if you can get to a chair, that's going to be the most stable thing that you can get to, because it's going to have the arms on it to be able to help you, okay? If you're out in the yard, do you have a stoop or something next to you or a stair that you can bump up to? No? Okay. Depends where it is. Okay. So something that's going to give you some leverage for your arm is what you're going to be looking for, okay? And the reason why is because then you can help lift you, and that's why your arms are also, like we talked about earlier, so important to your strength when it comes to your balance and falls. So you're going to try to scoot your body over, okay? And then you're going to get I hope I don't break these wires. You're going to get your body to here, okay? And then once you get your body to here, you're going to have to move your legs. And again, this is going to take a little bit of flexibility, which is why it's important that you're preparing for this before it happens. You're going to have to push up and scoot like that. I don't want to get those wires.
See, that's the difficult part, like going like that.
Right.
That's why our recommendation
Yes.
is prevent the fall.
Right.
We want to prevent the fall altogether. It's great that we can teach you how to get up, but we want you not to fall at all.
Right. And so now if you don't have a chair like this, because obviously, again, next to the bed, beds are typically higher than this. So it's going to be even harder to get up onto a higher bed. Out in the yard, if there's a stoop or something or a step, you're probably it's going to be a little bit easier to get up onto a smaller step, at least to get your bottom up, to get to get into a straighter position. If you're in a hallway that doesn't have anything, that's going to be a whole lot more difficult, because now what you're essentially having to do is crawl somewhere to try to find something. What we don't want you to be doing, especially if you're crawling somewhere, to try to pull on something. Because the last thing we want is for you to be pulling on something and then that thing to then fall on top of you. So that's why we want you to be on your side like this, next to it, but it has to be something sturdy. Because otherwise, if you're pulling on something like this that isn't sturdy, this is what's going to end up happening. It's going to come towards you. So what I would say, you know, to those of you that are concerned about your balance and have had some of those trip ups and falls already and that aren't in therapy, I would highly recommend you, at the very least, again, I have a sheet up here, coming in for therapy, even if it's just to see how your balance is, get an evaluation done from the therapist, see what you might need to be working on, so that way we can address that. And then also we can be looking at a potential home assessment for you as well to see what might need to be done in the home, to see what might need to be moved around, what might need to be there, whether it's a bed rail that might need to be there if you've had some extra falls around the bed, in the hallway, what might need to be there. So things like that we can talk about and look at. But you, like Carrie said, you want to try to prevent the falls before they happen. And the way to do that is to keep your muscles strong and flexible. And so the way to do that is through therapy. And obviously doing everything you're doing every day, all of your basic, you know, self-care and all of those things, but doing these extra exercises, if it's 2-3 times a week for, you know, an hour session, is going to help you in the long run. Okay? Yeah.
How does the therapy department partner with our fitness center?
Yes. So that's a great question. So what we do is once you get to a certain point with your therapy, we actually transition you over to the fitness center. So we actually take you over for several sessions over to the fitness center, show you how the machines work, and coordinate with the fitness center folks over there. And then that way you can actually start utilizing that equipment over there. So that way we make sure that you're able to safely utilize all that equipment. You feel comfortable with all of that equipment. So that way on your own time after that, once you've been taken off from once you've been taken off of our caseload from therapy, you can go over there anytime you want, not on, you know, your therapy schedule because you're done with therapy at that point. But you can go over there, you know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever's convenient for you, and go do your exercises to maintain what you've now accomplished through therapy. So it's a really nice continuum of care after you've done your therapy services.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I want to know the difference. Suppose my wife is cleaning and she bends down and she's on the floor. And she says, "Can you come over and help me get up?" And I go over there and I pick her up. But I notice if she would fall to try and pick her up, she becomes like dead weight. Mm-hmm. And what's the difference between, is there a formula to determine dead weight from just a normal lifting of a person?
So we never want anybody to just be lifting someone that is dead weight. And the reason why is because you could get hurt. So I will tell you as a therapist, we term it different ways in the levels of assistance, okay, is the way that we do it in the way that we're trained. And the reason why we do that is because at a certain level, that means that we need to call in a second person. And that's for our safety and for the other person, and for the person that we're working with, that patient or that resident. Because we don't want them to get hurt and we don't want us to get hurt. So it's really important that if someone just falls, because they bend down too far, and that's one thing, and she's asking for help because maybe she's just not strong enough to get up, and you're just kind of helping her by holding her hand, I would still consider that a fall. You might just not be doing a whole lot of work if that's the case, but if she becomes dead weight and you're having to lift her up, that's still a fall, but you're at an increased risk for getting hurt if you're having to bend over completely to do that work. If you're just having to hold somebody's hand to help them up, that's a very different story than having to pick them completely up.
Especially if a person is unconscious.
Well, yes, then you definitely call 911. Do not pick them up.
The chances are, if they're dead weight, they're probably injured. That's why they can't put any strength into helping themselves up, don't you think?
Now, I think when they get older, they get weight, because they don't
And sometimes,
allow themselves to rise.
and sometimes they're just so, maybe they've been trying, maybe you just happen to walk in, 5 minutes later and they've been trying for 5 minutes and now they're just like, okay, I need you now. I mean, you have to also think about the situation. Like if you weren't just standing there, that whole time and that particular person, if she was on the floor, I mean, if it just happened versus how long has she been there? You have to be thinking about the whole situation, the whole context and, of the situation. But in all reality, if it's happening and you're having to think about it to that minutia, it's an issue and it should be addressed by a doctor and a therapist.
Also, Hilton Head Fire Rescue, they will come and provide you a lift assist. They will come and pick you up at no charge. Let them, they're professionals, let them come and help you if you need it.
So that's why sometimes you see if the ambulance comes and they come out with just the gurney and not the patient.
Yeah.
So that would be a typical situation.
Yes.
And that would be acceptable to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I would say, after that, I would certainly then contact Carrie and Sherry and say, this is the situation, this has happened twice in the last week, or, this is the first time this has happened. Maybe we need to consider, looking into some therapy because we don't want it to happen again. Can we talk to the doctor about that?
What I always do, because you said 1 out of 3 will have a fall if you're over 65, and everybody here will admit to at least 65, so.
I'm not going to admit to it. Stephanie, how about you?
Except you 3. But what I do when I'm going to go into the shower, I just say to myself, be careful, you're going to the shower, and I think of that 1 out of 3, because the chances are that's the place where I'm going to fall more than any other place. And just, it's like when you say to your kids at night, if they're going out on a date or something, be careful. They're not listening, but you feel better when you tell them to be careful. In case anything happens, you warn them. But like with the shower, that helps me saying to myself, be careful, check the guardrails, and the chances are, if you're actively thinking that, you're not going to fall.
Right.
And put the pendant outside the shower door.
Your pendant is waterproof. You can wear it in the shower.
Yes. And having those and that's why we wanted to bring up the home assessment piece, because there are options that can be looked at. And especially with the shower, that's a big piece that a lot of folks don't look at, is what can be done in the shower or outside the shower that can make it even safer.
I always make good use of those guardrails.
Yeah.
And, because like I shave in the shower, and I want to make sure that I'm holding on with one hand and doing what I'm washing, or shaving or something with the other hand. But always knowing where the guardrails are.
Right.
So if you lose your balance, you can try and reach for one.
Right.
And like Ms. Huerta said too, make sure your pendant is outside the shower, that it's like in a place that if you would fall, you can get to it.
Or wear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right, they're waterproof, so you can wear it, but if you don't feel comfortable wearing it in the shower, or if you want to.
Well, I keep mine by my bed, but I really should carry it to the bathroom for the shower. One question I have
Yeah.
here, do we just call concierge if we just need a pickup instead of a SOS?
You can call the concierge, you can call 911 directly, you can push your pendant. Any of those options work just fine. Obviously, pushing your pendant is going to be the fastest way to get 911 here. And then if you have your phone, you can call 911 directly. That's going to be fast. We get notifications when 911 comes on site, and if a nurse is here and is available, she'll go out and assess you and wait until 911 gets there.
I have an interesting story I'd just like to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody here fell, some man, and the EMS came and they said, do you want us to take you to the hospital? And he said, no, I'm okay. He said, but if you could do me a favor and drop me off at my veranda, that'd be okay. And they said to him, we're not running a taxi service here. If you don't want to go to the hospital, you find your own way to get home.
So that's why I wanted to say, I need a pickup service. If you know you're okay, you haven't broken anything.
Yep,
And
that's all the same. When they ask you what your emergency is, you can let them know that literally I've fallen and I can't get up. I need help, and they'll come help you up.
Okay, so you can explain to them what level.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No charge carrying it?
No charge for a lift assist. Yeah. Hilton Head Fire Rescue will come and provide a lift assist at no charge.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, I encourage you guys, if you want to come see the pictures of the rehab team, you're more than welcome to. And I have some sheets up there for you as well that you're more than welcome to take with you. It just talks about the different things that therapy can provide. And I gave you all the pamphlets as well. But it just goes into a little bit more detail in regards to the different disciplines. And then you can read the bios. Okay? Thank you guys so much for coming out. Welcome.
That's for the wrong thing. I would like to make an appointment to have you